Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party Network. Me and Dallas King make our way through the A24 filmography, TV shows, and aim to bring you interviews along the way with the talent involved in front of and behind the camera. In this episode, I'm joined by Minari's Esther Moon, who played Mrs. O, who worked alongside Stephen Yeun's Jacob and Yeri Han's Monica in the chicken sexing factory, but has her own mysterious past that has brought her too to Arkansas. Esther takes us behind the scenes on how she went from helping with casting to getting a role in this Academy Award nominated movie, her reaction to the film, its success and its message as a Korean American, and so much more. It was a real privilege to sit and listen to Esther's story and hear her insights, and I hope you too will enjoy and appreciate what Esther brought to this interview. This feels like a special one and I'm excited to share it with you. Thanks so much to Esther for joining me, and I hope you too will enjoy the show. Where did your interest in becoming an actor spark from?
Oh man, I've loved acting ever since I was young. My earliest acting memory is acting at church. I grew up I grew up going to church, like Korean immigrant church, and holidays were a huge thing. So every Christmas, the entire like children's group, we would put together this Christmas pageant, and I was always part of it, and I was many times, one of the main stars. And so that's my earliest memory of like acting on stage and loving it and getting really like just great feedback, like, oh, Esther, you're so good, blah, blah, blah. And then just growing up in school, elementary, junior high, high school, any school performance I was part of. If there was a theater class, a drama class, performing class, I did it. In high school, I was part of the drama club. So I've just always loved it. It was, if there was an elective to take and there was an acting or theater, I mean, there was no question that's the elective I was going to take. Even in college, in undergrad, I took every class, every theater class you could take without being a theater major. And I just loved it. So, I mean, I've loved it all my life, but I didn't start pursuing it professionally until about 5-6 years ago.
And what was that moment that like 5-6 years ago you're like, I need to make a change, and what kind of inspired that for you?
Well, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. I, even, so the past 20 years, I've been in the field of mental health, social work and mental health. But even while I was working this full-time, just traditional job, if ever I heard of an open casting call somewhere, I would take a day off of work. I would call in sick, take a day off, and go stand in line for like 5 hours to audition. But what really made me, pursue this was I got diagnosed with breast cancer about 6 years ago, and 6-7 years now. Wow. And I went through the whole I had a couple of surgeries, went through chemotherapy, lost my hair, gained all this weight from like the side effects of steroids, and anyways, the whole 9 yards. And after that was all done, and I was starting the recovery process, I was just kind of thinking ahead to what work do I want to go back to doing after I'm fully recovered? And I had some really nice options because I had a pretty decent career in mental health, and I was also teaching at a couple of colleges. But the one and only thing that was in my mind that I wanted to do was once and for all, just going for this thing that I've loved all my life, which was acting. And, at that time, everyone around me, my family, my friends, they all knew that I had always like had this like love of acting. And when I mentioned that, man, after this year of being sick and everything, I just, the only one and only thing that I can think of wanting to do after I'm recovered is acting. And at that time I had been sick for a year and I was bald, and And so everyone around me was like, you know what? You had a rough year. Go treat yourself. Do what you want. You want to go act, go act, And I really think everyone thought I would go for it, do it for like 6 months or whatever, get it out of my system and then go back to like a real job. But, here I am like 5, 6 years later, and I am in it. I'm in it deep. I love it so much. I can't imagine not doing it anymore. Um, and so, yeah, here I am.
What a story. I'm curious as well. Like my day job, I work in mental health. I'm like an employment advisor working with people with disabilities and mental health conditions. And one of
Oh,
our
no
recent,
way.
yeah, one of our
Oh,
recent guests on the podcast, Deandra Lyle from Moonbase 8, she had a similar story to yourself. She worked in mental health and then made the transition to acting. And it's been something I've reflected on as well, is often in that job of mental health, you're a different person from each person to the next that you're working with. We often have that person-centered approach in terms of how we deal with people. Do
right.
you feel that sort of career, that 20 years in mental health, actually helped you prepare for acting, for being able to put on different faces?
Oh my gosh. I always say, as much as I would have loved to have pursued acting 20 years ago, I do not regret the time I spent in mental health.
Mhm.
It helps me so much in my acting career, personally and professionally. First of all, I think, just as an actor, um, coming coming in with all that extra additional life experience absolutely um, helps in my acting career, because first it's because acting, it's about like human experiences, right? It's about like just being human, and having had all these different like life experiences, there is a deeper well from which I can draw upon, right? I don't have to just make up things in my mind. I can actually think back and, to different experiences I had and just kind of reflect and, kind of bring it over into my acting world and apply it. So it's been really helpful in that way. But where it's been really, really helpful is dealing with all the different type of people
Mhm.
you deal with
Yeah.
in this business. You know what I mean? In Hollywood. I
Mhm.
mean, there are some weird characters out in LA, right? In the acting biz, um more than anything, honestly, because in mental health, I work with all populations, like all age groups, all types of, mental health diagnoses. I mean, you name it, and I probably encountered it, including personality disorders, right? Um, and so, as I'm navigating the business of acting and all the different just, agents and managers and just, set people, directors, other filmmakers, whatever. It's a cast of characters in this town.
Mhm.
And more than anything, my time in mental health has really helped me in just personally navigating and managing different personalities. Not much intimidates me. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? I don't really have a fear of like strange circumstances, unfamiliar situations. And so I think more than anything, that's what really prepared me, because it's not even about, because you know what they say about acting, it's like your acting and your acting abilities is like a small percentage
Mhm.
of your actual acting career, and so yeah, so I man, they say just timing is everything in life. And I've really come to realize that, and just really kind of grateful for how, different, different events in my life have played out. Um, Even though at the time I may have wished for something different, but in hindsight, I just see how beneficial um, it was. So, yeah.
For those whose introduction to you, like myself, was Minari, you've been in a range of TV shows, podcast, audio dramas, and movies. What would you kind of recommend people seek out if they were looking to discover more sides to your acting?
You know, there is this fiction podcast I was part of called Moonface.
Mhm.
It's available on, Apple and Spotify and all that. And it's a 6 episode fiction podcast about a gay Korean American male who wants to come out to his mom, but there's this big language barrier. Um, and it's just a beautifully made podcast. There's no visual, but if you read the reviews, and Vulture, IndieWire, all those outlets have reviewed it, and they said just the sound and the music and the dialogue, it feels like you're watching just a really good indie film.
Mhm.
So if you ever have a long drive, you have a long commute, you're going on a road trip, it's 6 short episodes. um, I don't speak much English in it, like Minari. um, but it just, I think just kind of indie family dramas are kind of like my thing right now.
Yeah.
I'm shooting another film soon, and it's another like indie family drama. And I mean, one day I would love to do like a slapstick comedy, or, play something like outrageous. But for now, that seems to be my thing. And I do love it, because there's just so much like layers to the characters I play. So yeah, if you ever, have a long drive, check out Moonface. The writer director of Moonface, his name is James Kim, and he's at Tribeca Film Festival in New York right now. And I guess Tribeca, it's their first year having like a fiction podcast category, and he just won that category.
Incredible. Congratulations.
Not for Moonface, but for a different one
Mhm.
called Vermont Avenue. But he's just so good with sound and music. And like, even though there's no visual, you're listening to it and you could totally see it in your mind. So yeah, check that out. And uh yeah, and there's more coming.
Yeah, I'll have to bump that up onto the playlist. When we touched on Minari, when did you sort of first hear about Minari as a potential offer or gig?
Well, actually, I had heard about the project because it was being produced by Plan B Entertainment, which is
Mhm.
Brad Pitt's production company, and it was like this Korean American story written by a Korean American director, starring Steven Yeun. Um, but then I had heard that some of the main cast they were actually bringing from Korea because it's like an immigrant family story, and so I didn't know that there was anything that was applicable to me.
Mhm.
How I got involved though is because they were in the middle of casting for the child actors, and they needed some fluent Korean speaking readers to like be in the
Mhm.
casting room and read with them. And I have a mutual friend who was friends with the casting director, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, are you free tomorrow? That Plan B movie, with Steven Yeun, they're casting for the kids, and they need a Korean speaking reader. I thought of you." And I was like, "Oh, actually, I'm free." So yeah. So I went the next day. I ended up going for like 2 or 3 days, and helping with casting. And it was so fun, because Alan Kim, the
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
boy who's like a superstar now.
Yeah, the
So-
trendiest guy in Hollywood.
right? Yeah. So, anyways, I saw his very first tape. It was He was so cute. So we had him come in person and read with Steven, read with me. Like, it was magical. And then so after that was all done, I was like, great, this was fun. Good luck with the project. And I thought that was it. But then, like, I don't know, a few days, a week later, the casting director called me and said, "Hey, there's actually this smaller supporting role of this lady who works at the chicken farm. And Isaac, the director, was interested if, you'd be interested in it. And if so, like, can you send the tape?" And I was like, of course I'd be interested, because by now I had read the whole script and I just loved the story. So then, yeah, I put myself on tape, sent it over, and then they contacted me saying that Isaac loved it and would I accept? And I said, hell yeah, I would accept. And so that's how it came about. It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't like a straight like audition offer or anything. It was just kind of like I was helping out with casting, and then um it just kind of happened that way. So it was, I feel so lucky to have, you know, been
Yeah.
in that position.
I can see where your attitude, where you touched on it earlier, of like certain things, even when the good times and bad times, when they just happen, it's kind of that, like you can imagine a circumstance like that of just like a friend of a friend, and here you are, like you've ended up in this like Academy Award winning movie through like, those
Right.
little circumstances. It's
Who would have
wonderful.
thought? It's amazing. It's amazing. It has been. Yeah.
It's one of those things I'm curious about, like Hollywood, for example. Like, how rare is an opportunity like that for a film like this to come up for someone like yourself, where it's very much like we want to hire Korean Americans, we want to bring Korean voices into the frame. How often do opportunities like that come up, or are they still incredibly rare?
Oh my God. Never. I mean, first of all, for this, seemingly smaller kind of indie immigrant family drama to ultimately end up as a best picture nominee, I mean, the odds are extremely low.
Mhm.
And then you add to that it's about a Korean American with Korean cast. I mean, it's, yes, the year prior to that, Parasite
Mhm.
won, but that was a Korean film. But I mean, prior to those, has it ever happened before?
Yeah.
Never. It's never happened before. That's why
Mhm.
it was such a historic moment. Um, and so it was, and now what's encouraging is that I'm seeing a lot more projects in the works
Mhm.
with not just, Korean American, but like Asian American, even like South Asian, like Indian
Mhm.
American families, just people of color in general. I'm seeing a lot more projects in the works.
Yeah.
And, we'll have to see what happens because, Hollywood, it's like there's so many things that get greenlit and it's in the works and
Mhm.
it actually gets made and then it dies,
Yeah.
and it doesn't go anywhere after that. Um, but it's really encouraging nowadays, though, when I do see the number of projects that are getting greenlit, and hopefully, a lot of them kind of go all the way. And it doesn't always have to be an Academy Award
Mhm.
nominated film. You know, um, we talk about this often with like other like Asian American filmmakers, like about representation and visibility and what that all means.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm just like, I wish we wouldn't put such pressure on ourselves to like when we make something, it has to be like an award winning thing.
Mhm.
No, like let's make some B-level comedies, let's make some like cheesy action flicks. Like to me, that's like representation and visibility. It's not just all about like perpetuating this model minority myth about, oh, like when we make something, it's Oscar worthy. No, it doesn't have to be. It's like let's make all sorts of stuff, mediocre stuff, kind of shitty stuff, like just let's just put it out there, and once in a while we will have these like award winning stuff too, so it's really encouraging these days, just to see and just, I feel like even the timing thing, right? It's like I feel like I entered this field at a really opportune time.
Mhm.
um yeah, and even my age, like I'm a middle-aged woman, but even that I feel like is kind of timely. um Everyone needs a mom, right? An aunt, a crazy auntie, you know what I mean? So yeah.
When you got kind of cast, what was the sort of turnaround time from being cast to then heading out to film? I assume you were out there in Oklahoma filming your scenes.
Right. Maybe like a month.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I shot towards the latter part of production. So the main cast, they were there for I think about a month. I was just there for a few days. Um, so from the time I got the call saying that I booked the role, to actually going out to Oklahoma to shoot. I think it was about a month.
Mhm. How do you prepare for shooting in that month? Are you someone that just draws from what's in the script, or do you develop a backstory for your character of Mrs. Owen in that time? How do you prepare, and what's your process?
I do. I create a whole backstory for all my characters, even though you you will never hear about it. The audience will never know Mrs. O's backstory. But for me, as an actor, as I get into character, I create this whole world that Mrs. O lives in
Hmm.
because that is going to influence the way she talks, the way she answers, um, and 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 I think it works for me because um this film, there's a lot of like little nuances that if you're not from like an Asian immigrant family, you might not quite pick up on it. But other fellow Korean Americans have commented on how, even when I respond, I don't know if you remember that a conversation when Monica, the wife, asks me, how come there's no Korean
Yeah, I'm
churches?
going to be asked. That's one of my
Oh,
questions. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Because and the way I respond. Now, if you are a fellow Korean American
Hmm.
immigrant, you know how huge the Korean church is in the fabric of Korean American community. It's kind of the social hub. And so for Mrs. O to say what she said, like there's a reason why people
Hmm.
move out here. It's to get away from the Korean church. To a lot of people, it might just be a statement that just kind of like goes over their head. But for fellow Korean American
Hmm.
immigrants, oh, we know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so even though I draw from my own personal experiences having grown up in the Korean
Hmm.
church, I also create this whole backstory of what happened that she is so done with the Korean community.
Hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, the audience will never know, never see, but for myself, as an artist, yes, I absolutely do make up this whole backstory, and there are reasons for why I say the things I say and why I answer the way I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What was that first day like on set? How did what was the actual set itself like? Because it was like a real factory. What was it like the whole kind of your first day like on this location?
They made it easy for me to get into character
Hmm.
because we filmed at an actual chicken like hatchery.
Hmm.
And I mean, Oklahoma, it was my first time in Oklahoma, and we were there in August.
Hmm.
It was so hot, so humid, and we were in this chicken hatchery. There's no air conditioning in there. And they had fans, but they had to turn the fans off for the sound. And so for the majority of the day, it is hot and humid. And, they set it up so that we're actually like touching the chicks. And, aside from the cameras and the people, I mean, it was kind of set up
Hmm.
the way it really happens. And so it was really easy for me to be there, sit down, and just become immersed
Hmm.
into the life of a chicken sexer. Um, you know, and if you've been on set, you'll know how, there's a lot of waiting around,
Hmm.
right? Setting up the camera, setting up the lights, and then we shoot one angle, then we go to a wider shot. So there's a lot of sitting around and waiting. And during that time, uh it just really like I just really felt, I've mentioned this, and oh god, I always get so emotional when I talk about this part because as I was sitting there in that heat and humidity and the dust and the smell, I really felt kind of the spirit, that immigrant spirit of, doing what you need to do. As I'm sitting there, I just really felt just kind of that spirit, that grit, the resolve of just immigrants, not just immigrants, but people who do what they have to do
Yeah.
to support their families, um, to just support, just live life, you know? Um, and I just, oh man, just sitting there, I felt that.
Yeah.
I felt like, and then, and on set, actually, I met um, real life chicken sexers.
Hmm.
They were there. The director had hired them um, as background actors, just to be extras in the background. You don't see them a whole lot, but they're there. And also, they were there to teach us like how to handle the chicks to make it look like we're actually doing it. Um, and so, and so during breaks, I got to talk to them about their lives. And, it was so funny because they were so fascinated about my life in LA as an actor. But I kept interrupting them to ask them about their lives living in Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Hmm.
And so, even just being able to meet and connect with, um, real life chicken sexers. It was, yeah, it was, oh man, it was such a, it was a very just meaningful time for me.
Hmm.
Because first of all, it's just so fun, right? Anytime I'm on set acting, it's so fun. But then there was this additional layer of just the type of story it was, the people I was meeting, and I felt like I was learning even more about our Korean American history.
Hmm.
So it was amazing. It was a wonderful time, except for the weather.
Yeah. Well, I'm so touched that you could share that with us, and probably much like yourself, it seems that Mrs. O is a very empathetic character, and she's certainly left an impression on me in the few times I've watched the film. It's Monica is a character that seems to be her feelings, what she's looking for is often overlooked and neglected, and it feels like Mrs. O is the first one to sort of see her, look at her, and
Yeah.
recognize that. And it takes care of her feelings. And I think of that line where you've like, oh, you're good enough, you're fast enough, and we need to be told that sometimes. You're good
Yeah,
enough, and it's
you're
that.
good.
Yeah, and you've come to the right place, and it's said with such a smile and warmth. And even later on in the film, when we see Jacob is clearly struggling,
Mm.
and it's one of those things it might not necessarily be there on the screen, but you get the impression like Mrs. O is just looking across the room and seeing someone struggling, and she's got that empathy. What was that kind of character like for you to take on, someone that is in this challenging job but cares for the people around them and is wanting to make sure people feel involved and loved, and sees through the challenges that they're going through?
Yeah, it was interesting because as Mrs. O, um, I felt all those things that you just said. Just I see the struggle. I've lived that struggle, right? So, the things Monica talks about, and I there were additional scenes that were cut,
Hmm.
and I wish some of them were actually had made it because it shows even more into like the relationship. Um, but Mrs. O was, as much as I'm so empathetic to their plight because I've lived it, I understand. With every fiber of my being, I understand her struggle,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I don't want to get too involved, right? Um, and so it was, it was really interesting because uh, you know, it was there was this internal struggle about like, well, how much should I open up and connect? Because do I really want to be that involved? You
Hmm.
know, uh, like there's a reason I moved out to this country. I'm living in a place where there's not a whole like if I wanted to, I could go to the town where there's more Koreans, but I purposely chose not to
Hmm.
for a reason. And there's this Monica, there's this young woman who like I so feel for her. I feel like that's me like 15 years ago. but oh, like, do I really want to get that involved?
Hmm.
You know? And so it was a struggle for me, like, my character. Um, and so if the couple of other scenes had made it in, you would see that more,
Hmm.
about where she's do you remember the scene when Monica's mom comes from Korea and she brings all these anchovies, and
Yeah.
then Monica just cries? There's a scene that got cut out where Monica actually brings some to me,
Ah.
because this is like precious gold,
Hmm.
this is like from Korea. You can't get the same stuff out here. So she brings me some of that, but I'm slightly rejectful of it.
Hmm.
I think because on one hand, oh my God, this is amazing. These are flavors that you just can't get out here. But then there's all these emotions like, oh my God, it's like home brought to me. But
Yeah.
there's painful memories of home too. But then it's mixed in with homesickness and longing for Korea. And then it's mixed in with like, I'm so touched that Monica would, part with some of this precious gold and give it to me. But then, but again, do I really want to accept that graciousness and be more involved and more? So there's like this whole thing going on with Mrs. O. So it was a very layered, kind of conflicted character
Yeah.
that I had so much fun
You
playing.
touched on it, the bit about sort of like the Korean church, and that really stood out for me on my repeat viewing of that. We always think about it's that kind of people assimilating with different cultures, this family that are trying to live the American dream, but then Monica wants that sort of Korean culture and people surrounding, and it's one thing I suppose it's my ignorance of maybe Korean culture, American culture, and religious culture, that I don't really know what a Korean church is like, or why people would maybe want to escape it or reject it. So it's one of those things you watch and you go, oh, I don't really understand that aspect. And, and it's one of these things, it's not always about people, people go often to America. When you think back of like historically, people emigrate to America to escape religious persecution and such like. And you wonder if there's an element of that kind of at play as well, kind of tapping into that original American dream in a way that Mrs. O is inhabiting. It's not all about going there and bringing Korean culture. It's also sometimes fleeing persecution or something else.
Right. So for Koreans, it wasn't really about fleeing. Um, when there's a saying, there's like a joking saying that, when you see a group of Chinese people, there's always a Chinese restaurant.
Mhm.
When you see a group of Koreans, there will always be a church. The church was, it wasn't honestly like, it wasn't even about religion
Mhm.
that much. I mean, it is, but Korean churches also served as like just the social hub of the Korean community.
Mhm.
So even if you didn't believe in God, even if you weren't religious, even if you weren't a Christian, you still went to church because that's where you make friends. That's where you get information. I mean, it is the social hub of, it used to be, of the Korean community. That's where you make friends. That's where you find spouses for your children. That's where you learn about jobs that are opening up, that
Mhm.
I mean, just everything. And religion was just kind of a, you know, extra, I guess, topping on
Mhm.
top. But it served an important social function, but at the same time, it's also a place of great division,
Mhm.
great judgment. Um, Koreans are funny. um, I mean, I'm Korean and I'm proud to be Korean, but I am not blind to our faults. Um, we are, we have so much love, but we're so passionate, but then we also have hot tempers, you know? We're very opinionated, we're outspoken about it. Um, we can be passive aggressive about it. And there's just a lot of judgment and comparison. The whole like model minority myth that Asian Americans hate. In Korean churches, it was also a place where you could show off and brag, and if you were a successful, then it was like you're like big fish in a
Hmm.
small pond. But then if you're not successful, it you're just there's just so much shame
Hmm.
about it, right? And even like children, and I know this is not exclusive to just Asian Americans, but especially for Korean immigrants, their children's success was an indicator of their success. You know what I mean? And so if they're so it just there was like pressure upon pressure upon pressure. And so there's just for every good, oh, there's so much bad
Hmm.
too. And so that's just you know and I've certainly felt that myself too, because I was not one of those like you know smart and academically like successful
Hmm.
Asian kid. I was, I had my head in the clouds. I liked to play, and so I grew up always feeling judged as well and
Hmm.
compared. Um, and so I really understood where Mrs. O, the character, she came from. And
Yeah.
so, I still have conflicted feelings about church, Korean American church, because of the way I grew up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just, kind of in a nutshell. Like, you know, I don't know if that all made sense, but
No, no, no,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
I've learned a hell of a lot there. And for obviously the film was directed by Lee Isaac Chung. What was he like as a director, and how did he work with you on set?
Oh my gosh. You know how Minari is just such a gentle film,
Yeah.
right? And that's how Isaac is. He is a man of not many words, but he's just so thoughtful. He's so kind. He's so gentle. Um, and he's just he's so generous. Um, you know, he gives you as an actor, he gave me a few thoughts, but otherwise it was just kind of like go with your, go with what you feel Mrs. O is,
Yeah.
Um, and so he gives a lot of like kind of uh freedom, um, and a safety because he's just so kind and gentle. You feel safe, kind of putting your own take on things
Yeah.
and your interpretation. He was wonderful to work with. He's just a wonderful human being,
Mm.
you know. Um, they all were, Isaac, Stephen, Yeti. I mean, they were just all wonderful to work with. I would work with them again in a heartbeat, Um, yeah, they were just great, with Isaac, even when I worked with him for a few days in the casting room. He was just so kind. He's just such a kind soul. Um, yeah, he was great. I,
It was
I I can't say enough nice things.
obviously the
Honestly.
film was semi-autobiographical for him. Did he kind of bring you into that story, or did you kind of find out about it after the fact? How much did you kind of know at the time?
Um, when did I find out that it was semi-autobiographical? I feel like I knew pretty early on
Mhm.
that it was semi-autobiographical. He and we didn't, get that, many opportunities to chat about that. Um, but I think, yeah, I think I knew pretty early on. And, even during the casting, I think, I would ask a few questions. I think when I was in Oklahoma, I might have asked about like, oh my God, you grew up in this weather, kind of thing. But, unfortunately, we didn't get, a whole lot of opportunity to just kind of sit and chat about his life, which I would love to. God, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, he could only fit so much in, a 2-hour film,
Yeah.
but, oh, the additional stories he must have. Yeah.
Did you become an expert in all this chicken sexting, or is it very much for camera of like, Yep, that'll do.
Oh, I, it's so funny now when I go out to eat with friends.
Hmm.
If there's ever a chicken dish, they're like, "Okay, what sex is this?" Like it's like a running joke now.
Yeah.
Um, uh, no, although I didn't really do it, I knew what we were supposed to do. So, like,
Hmm.
first you have to squirt out their poop because otherwise, when you
Hmm.
turn them over to look, they could squirt in your face.
Oh God, I did not know that, and I will not look at Minari the same way again.
Oh, right. So that's why we're always like squeezing
Yeah.
first and then turning them over. I still don't know quite what you're looking for when you turn them over. Like I just could not tell. I couldn't tell the difference. Um, but yeah, supposedly there's a way to tell.
You're probably
And
still good enough for Oklahoma chicken
yeah,
sex, then.
good enough for Oklahoma. Exactly. I wouldn't cut it in California, but Oklahoma, I'm good. I was in the right place.
What was Stephen Yen and hopefully, if correct me if I'm wrong here, Han Yu Ray like to work with in this chicken sexting farm together?
They were great. I mean, they were so in it, right? And especially because they had already been filming for a couple of weeks, for a few weeks by the time I got out there. So they had really kind of, I mean, there were times when, during our scenes, just that I could feel the tension,
Mhm.
the unspoken conflict. Even in between shots, um, they were just so in their characters
Mhm.
that it was so easy to believe that they were Monica and Jacob,
Yeah.
and they were there for the reasons why the stories say they were there. It was just so easy. When you work with great actors, it just makes your job so much easier as well. And just I when I would look at you know Yeti, Monica, or when I would look at Steven, I just really felt like I was looking at Monica and Jacob. um it didn't feel like acting. I felt their burden.
Yeah.
I look at their faces and just the burden on
Mhm.
their face, and I just felt that spirit as
Yeah.
well. And it weighed heavy on me in that moment.
Yeah, it was one
Um,
of. So I was chatting about it with one of my co-hosts. I'd seen the film twice. Like I'd received like a screener copy at the end of last year. Wouldn't stream to my TV, so I'm watching it on my laptop. And then I watched it again at a film festival in February. And then just a couple of weeks ago, as the cinemas opened up here, Minari was one of the first films back on the big screen. So immediately I wanted to see it there. And it's that tension in the face that you talk about. You can watch a film on a computer or a phone, whatever. But there was a bit that stood out for me. It's when they've had this argument outside the Korean shop, and like they're deciding like it's probably the end of the line for them. And something I'd never seen in the two times I'd watched the film before was like you see the trembling on Jacob's lip. That feeling we all get when we're emotional, just trying to keep it in. And I was like, I never saw that before, whether that was just poor watching on a laptop, whatever. But you watch that and you go, I can see that tension. And the film just elevates immediately when you can see that right in front of you.
yeah, absolutely. I think, something like this, you have to watch it on the big screen,
Yeah.
to just, and then, it probably helps that you saw it a couple of times,
Yeah.
like every time you see a film, you pick up additional things, right? Yeah. Oh, they did such a good job. That scene outside the grocery
Yeah.
store,
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking,
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, that was such a great scene. Steven did such a great, oh, he was so great there.
And you touched on it, one of your fellow performers, Alan Kim, he's become this huge breakout star. What was he like? Obviously, you were there in that early audition. What was he like on set? Was he the character that we kind of all see him to be? Like, obviously, they say now not to work with children and animals. There you are in this hot place in Oklahoma doing both.
Alan was David,
Mm-hmm.
basically. he's so cute in person. He's mischievous. He has that, oh, infectious giggle and laugh. And he was just such a typical kid too. Like in between shots, like when he's bored, he's playing on his, he's playing his games and he's like walking around being mischievous. Yeah, he's so cute. He was magical from the first time. I mean, after I helped them with the casting, I didn't know who they were ultimately going to go with because there were some, other good actors there. But for me, I was like, oh, this Alan kid is
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
He was magical. I don't know who they're going to end up going with, but I just couldn't imagine who could be better than at this role than Alan. And I was so happy to see that it was him. And yeah, what you see on screen, he's like that in real life. He's so cute. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
When did you get the chance to see Minari for the first time, and what was your expectations going in and that initial reaction?
I didn't get to see it for a while because it had won Sundance, but I didn't go to Sundance. I couldn't make it. And then, COVID happened. And so everything got shut down. And you know, I couldn't see it anywhere. And they were being very careful about like releasing, copies and stuff. And so I didn't watch it until like a few months after it debuted at Sundance. And how did I feel after my first time watching it? I think I thought like, when I had read the script, I could tell like, oh, like what a lovely family story. Um, But when I saw the final product, with the sound, with the music,
Yeah, beautiful score.
beautiful score, it was so much, it was so elevated, and it met my expectations
Mhm.
plus some. Um, it was, I was, and I was kind of blown away, like, wow, how lucky am I that I had even a small role in such a beautiful film like this. I just felt so lucky. And I was just so happy for Isaac and Steven. And I was like, wow, it won Sundance and it's like getting all this like awards buzz. Wow, I hope it does amazing.
Mhm.
And it went all the way to the Oscars. So it exceeded, I had no idea.
Mhm.
I had no idea. And so it just kind of blew me away, exceeded all my expectations. Um, and just kind of just so still so filled with, just kind of gratitude that I was able to be even a small part of it.
What's been the reaction like amongst the sort of the American Korean community towards Minari and its success kind of in the past few months?
Oh, everyone is so proud. Everyone is so proud, you know, because we were happy when Parasite did so well, but there's a slight disconnect for us because we're not like Korean, we're Korean American. So when something like Minori, something that we can actually relate to
Mhm.
as children of immigrants, right? Everyone is so proud. People were just overjoyed that, a story about, our immigrant story, that it, first of all, was made so beautifully, worthy of being proud of. But also just, that it was accepted, that it was, that, you didn't have to be Korean or Asian to relate to the themes of family and struggle and dreams. So everyone's so proud. Um, and, but I think also it comes with, we're so proud of the film and we're just so happy that it's been just all the accolades that it's received and being talked about. But, also there's a little bit of gosh, but I hope this doesn't, you know, just keep us in this immigrant box,
Hmm.
you know? Because, as much as we're so proud of and we own our immigrant stories, we don't want that to be the end of the story,
Yeah.
you know? We don't want to be looked at just as immigrants, as others, as foreigners, you know? We're Korean, but we're also American, and so even for me, I am happy to continue playing, these immigrant roles where, the character doesn't even speak much English. I'm happy to continue playing that, but I hope that's not the only thing
Yeah.
I play. You know what I mean? So I think as much joy and pride there is. There's also a sense of, okay, this is great that it's creating all this dialogue and discussion, but gosh, I hope we're not just boxed into just these type of roles as well, and these type of stories,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so
One
a mixed bag.
one thing I'm curious about, like the timing of the film. Unfortunately, we've seen it, unfortunately, in the news, the amount of Asian hate that's been going around in places like America. Do you think films like Minari come along and remind people that, you know, the immigrants, they are the people that are the bedrock of America, that make things, you know, you enjoy your chicken dish where it's come from, someone's worked hard, someone's grafted to do that. They're the people around you. Do you feel like a film like Minari plays an important role in an unfortunate kind of time as well?
I'm hoping, because I hope, you know, y- what discussion being part of Minari has opened up for me is, when I speak to my, non-Asian, non-immigrant friends, just white, Caucasian, all American as you think they are, what this has actually kind of brought up was when they talk about, oh, I know that my great grandfather, when he first immigrated over from like Poland, uh, worked in this factory. I'm hoping it uh, kind of makes people pause and remember where they came from,
Yeah.
because they are also many generations removed, yes, but they are also, children of immigrants.
Mhm.
And so, you know, whenever a movie like Minari, you know, gets the amount of attention it's received, and people from all over, the country watch it, first of all, I hope it normalizes kind of seeing Asian faces.
Mm.
It normalizes, hey, we have the same struggles, different circumstance, but it's the same struggle, same emotions, you know. Um, yeah, I really do hope it kind of, opens up that kind of dialogue, that kind of mindset. And even for me in my personal life, I've seen uh, kind of the conversations that we wouldn't have had 2 years ago, but we're having now. You know, um, so it's it's encouraging, it's hopeful. Um, yeah, and I hope people take away more of that kind of positivity from a movie like Minari.
I saw a great comment from Stephen where it was like it's about the immigrants reclaiming that red hat that's been hijacked by white supremacists,
Yeah,
by people like Donald Trump. It's like
yeah,
immigrants wore that red cap to work hard
yeah,
to do the land. It's much as ours, and it's not all yours. It's not always about fighting over flags. It can be
yes,
a clothing symbol as well.
yes. I love that. I saw that quote too about rebranding that red hat.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it.
What was your Academy Awards evening like? Did you stay up to watch it? Were you nervous, excited? How did you have like an Oscar party?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We gathered at my friend's house. We had, you know, oh yeah, we had a little, a Oscar watching party. We had food, we had drinks, we had the TV set up to like max volume.
Mhm.
Um, it was exciting. I wasn't there, but I was there in spirit. And oh, it was just so exciting. We had a blast. And when Yoon Jung, the grandma, won for Best Supporting, we were, I mean, screaming and yelling and tears. Oh, it was so great.
And
I'm
the
gonna
odds of
cry
Brad Pitt as
again.
well. One of the film's producers being the one to hand her the Oscar as well was a lovely touch. Though I did
Was
see you got
it?
told off though, was like, where were you when we were hard at work on set? I saw that you got a bit of a telling off from her.
Oh my God, it was so funny. And I don't know if you've have you, because she's won a couple of other awards,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you've seen any of her other
Yeah, yeah,
speeches.
yeah.
Hilarious. Did you see her speech for the BAFTAs?
Yes, I did. Oh my God. It was like, yes, kick their asses for that. Like it was, yeah, she really had us like sorted there.
Oh my God. And the thing is like, I know she's like a new face to Western audiences,
Mhm.
but in Korea, she is a veteran.
Yeah.
She's like the Judi Dench, the Meryl Streep of Korea.
Mhm.
So she does not care. You know what I mean? So like she just has this freedom
Yeah.
to just say what she says. And I mean, Brad Pitt, you know what I mean? So it's been so lovely and wonderful seeing her on the award
Mhm.
circuit
Oh gosh.
and just hearing what she says. I don't know if you saw, she did a post Oscars interview and they asked, wait, did they ask her? Because they were asking her about like Brad Pitt
Oh,
and
how did he smell or something like
yes.
that? Was it?
And she
Yeah.
was like, I am not a dog. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Just like she's so funny. Oh my God. She's like I know. I feel like, watching her doing these interviews and like award speeches, it's like it's a lesson in public speaking almost.
We always ask everyone that we have on the show. Obviously, A24 released the film. Is there any films of theirs that are other highlights of yours in addition to Minari?
Oh, absolutely. Like a few years ago, like Lulu Wang. I love that. Um, just and Moonlight,
Yeah.
when it won a few years ago as well. But stories like Lulu Wang's The Farewell, because it's another like Asian centric story. Those stories always kind of you know, closer to my heart. Right off the bat, The Farewell and Moonlight, it was, I loved them.
And what's kind of coming next for yourself? You mentioned you were working on a kind of project. Is there anything you can kind of tease at this moment?
So I'm filming. I'll start shooting in about a month.
Mhm.
It's another, it, like kind of an indie family movie,
Oh.
kind of like Minari. Um, I can't say too much about it yet, but it's another lovely story about two families. And this time I'm part of the main ensemble cast. But it's about two families. One is a girl who's a Korean American adoptee, a Korean adoptee, and the other family that I'm part of is a recent uh, transplant from
Mm.
Korea, and just uh, their two lives kind of colliding as we help find like the history of the girl's background kind of thing, and it's not what you think it is or what she was told it was. And and then but there's like two separate storylines that also kind of, yeah, so it's I that's probably all I can say about it, but it's another, yes, it's a Korean family and then a white family with a Korean adoptee, but again, such relatable things about um, belonging, a sense of family, what's family, and just kind of um, identity, and just that sense of self,
Yeah.
where that comes from, you know, um, a story like that. So I'm really excited to shoot that. Um, yeah, and then just there's other things kind of in the works. Um, so yeah, it's just a really kind of fun
I'm excited.
an exciting time for me.
Yeah, I'll have to keep my eyes open on that. And for people that want to keep up to date with any of the news or when things are kind of coming along, where's the best places to follow you online?
I'm on Instagram, Esther Moonstagram. And my Instagram is kind of a mix of like, yes, when when there's like interviews or news, like I'll post about it. But then it's also a mix of like there's just like silly mom stuff. You'll see my husband and kids sometimes. It's just kind of a mix. But probably Instagram is the best place to kind of keep up with everything.
Well,
Because any big news, I'll post there.
Well, thank you so much. You've been so generous and open and honest with us. It's been really beautiful to just listen and learn from you today. And I think everyone that's probably reading between the lines is now desperate to see you as a B-movie action star in your own like John Wick style trilogy. I think like that's what we're wanting to see
Yes,
next. Like the Korean John Wick starring Esther Moon in the lead role.
yes,
We've got to will that into existence.
yes, like straight to video.
Oh no! Like at least go into like cinemas for a weekend. Let's start
Okay,
from there. Yeah.
okay. But like, yes. Oh my God. Yes, yes. From your lips, Lee. Let's make it happen.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor, and I'm so touched that you shared such lovely stories and insights with us. It's meant a lot. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was so fun. This was a lovely time. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I look forward to seeing all the other things you do as well.